Welcome to the M Squared Leadership Conversation. This is a space where we talk honestly about the real challenges leaders face and what it actually takes to lead well in the real world. I'm Michelle Hales.
I'm Michael Hales. Welcome in. Glad you're here.
Glad you're here. So today's topic is a little bit heavy, I think it might be, but I think it's going to be fun to unpack. Busyness, abstraction, and the quiet disappearance of people.
Mm-hmm.
So, you recently did a blog post about this, and now we're having this conversation. And
Yeah.
it starts with a really uncomfortable idea that leaders can get so busy and so focused on data and problems and outcomes that the people kind of fade into the background.
Right.
And you want to talk a little bit about what made you actually want to write about this?
Yeah. It actually, the idea came from this book right here. This is Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last, a really good book. I'm still in the process of devouring it. I'm listening to it on Audible, and I also obviously got the printed copy. But he wrote about this whole idea of people as numbers.
Yeah.
And that just really affected me. And it was really kind of staggering to me because I've been in this leadership space, pursuing leadership, trying to be a better leader for many years now. And of course, in my heart, I know that leading is about people. There's not any other reason why we need leaders except to lead people. That's what they do. But it's so easy to get distracted from that real purpose of leadership. And I know we've got, you got some questions queued up that you're going to ask. And so I don't want to get too far down that road, but the people as numbers instead of people as people idea and concept just really struck me.
And I think anybody who's really a true leader at heart, and leader is serving your people, you don't ever want to think that there was a time in your leadership that your people were numbers.
Right.
That your people were.
Nobody wants to think as a leader that you would ever view them that way.
Right.
But it's so easy to do.
You don't want to be like, as a worker, I don't want to be viewed that way. And then, of course, as a leader, I don't want to have, been guilty of committing, that crime, in quotes. But yeah, so it's important that we kind of talk about it and bring it to surface.
Agreed.
Because we don't necessarily go to work to make a bunch of best friends. We go to work to do the work. And when you're leading people, you're leading them to accomplish something. But you can't leave the people aspect out of it. So it's
Absolutely.
Fascinating. Yeah. Very good. So, I guess you used the word abstraction, and that's not really a word that you hear a lot in like the leadership, framework here. And I'm just wondering why abstraction is used kind of in this context. Tell me what that really
Blame
means.
it on Simon Sinek.
Okay.
He's clearly a very smart individual, and he understands and presents these complex concepts in ways that I've never really thought about. And abstraction, I never really thought about that word very much, but he used it, and it's a good word.
Yeah.
And I think what it means is the fact that you can lose sight of something and almost mistake people for something that they're not. And it's instead of viewing a person as a real living, breathing, you could be me over there. I could put myself in your place when I'm a leader and a busy one, and especially if I'm have vast areas of responsibility, I can look at people, and instead of seeing them as individuals who think and feel and behave like I do, and instead of having empathy for them, it's easy for me to start viewing them as headcounts. And the I come from federal government, and as do you. You'll understand this term, FTE, a full-time equivalent. And there's nothing necessarily pejorative about that. It's leaders are responsible for keeping track of the numbers. It's just something that comes with the territory. And I'm not suggesting that any leader should ever ignore the numbers. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, it's very easy when you have to view it like that to lose sight of the fact that FTE is a real living, breathing person that is just as viable and valid as I am. They have feelings, they have hopes and dreams and all of that. And all that doesn't show up in the head count. It doesn't, the FTE tally mark it can never represent the totality of that person. But yet, when we're leading, especially at scale, we have to a lot of times. We're compelled to.
For sure. And so how do leaders fall into this without even realizing it? Like, you would think, I'm not connected with them, but the leader doesn't go around really with their clipboard and saying, who am I connected to today? And did I make the right personal connection? And so how...
You can't. And it's the reality, I think, of the world that we live in, that it's very hard to do that.
Well, we want to systemize everything. We want to have a checklist. We want to, have a standard operating procedure for everything, because it helps us not let important things fall through the cracks, right?
But here's the thing. People don't fit on checklists. People do not fit in boxes.
Right.
And I think the world that we live in, there's a lot of pressure on leaders to try to cram them in there. There's a lot of pressure. I think I've said pressure 2 or 3 times in the last couple of sentences, but there's immense pressure on leaders nowadays because of the way our culture is heading and the focus on short-term results. I have to produce results. And I'm not here to say that results aren't important. Of course they are. But I think my thesis and my main point that I'd like people to take away from this conversation is results and numbers can never become more important than real, living, breathing people.
Yes.
And that, I think it's easy to lose sight of that, and it's easy to get those twisted because you have to pay attention to the numbers and the pressure that leaders get from all sorts of quarters demands that. And so it really takes a big effort on the part of leaders to keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing always has to be people.
It's always the people.
It has to.
Always. And you mentioned this earlier, but it happens, it gets worse on scale. Like, we worked with a client this morning that's a small growing business, and they're very intimate. It's just a handful of people, and they are taking care of each other. It's naturally happening in that smaller setting. I work in a mid-size office. We can easily get together a Mardi Gras party for lunch, or whatever we might want to celebrate. We can kind of still still have that camaraderie, the feeling of that we're not numbers. We know each other's grandma's in here, that this is your dog's name, that kind of thing.
The size of the group makes it easy to be intimate.
Right.
But when, like you said, as it gets bigger, that gets harder and harder.
Yes. So I guess I'm wondering, as scale happens, what could be some solutions that we offer or that could be done when, as scale is happening, that you remember the people?
It's a really good question. I don't know that I have a pat answer for it. Here's something that I was planning to bring up at some point in this conversation. We'll go ahead and go there now. Sinek in his book talks about, and he goes into a lot of really kind of heavy duty for a leadership book like this, sort of scientific background and principles. And he talks about the different chemicals that happen in our body, dopamine and serotonin and so forth, and how those affect us and how they kind of dictate how we behave in a lot of ways. And he goes back to, it's kind of inherent in the nature of people that we are really incapable of finding what I'm going to call community. He may use a different word than that, with more than about 100 to 150 people. And it's really interesting how he goes into it. He didn't just pull the number out of thin air.
Yeah.
There's very valid scientific principles that underlie that, but it's that number. So when you get, the way that we're wired, we're able to have a degree of intimacy with about that many people. And when you get beyond that, sorry, all my Facebook 5,000 friends, you can't really have that kind of intimacy with numbers that large. But I know there are a lot of organizations out there that are large and far larger. The only thing I can come up with is there has to be, and somebody has to lead those organizations, of course, and CEO or the whoever, the director of the organization, they have to be responsible for people on that kind of scale. But I think there has to be smaller organizations within that larger organization that are of the right size, and then that community has to feed up and down.
It makes me think of the military. You have companies, you have, so our son works at the airlift wing, and then you've got, it keeps being broken down until you're in just a little department of, a few people, and that are doing a certain thing towards the grand, bigger mission of the Air Force. And I think that's, the way that it's passed down, the thread that's fed.
Yeah, there has to be a thread.
Is the culture.
And I hadn't even really planned to talk about this, but it's coming to my mind, the vital importance of high quality, human-centered leadership at every step in that chain. Every link of that chain has to have that, or it's going to break down.
So it will break down if somebody then decides to be a manager of a group rather than a leader of a group. You'll start having the breakdown, and that's where people will start feeling like numbers and, did you show up? Did you produce? Did you blah, 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 rather than how are you really? Yeah.
It really is a huge problem, because it's going to affect how people, we talked about it earlier, organizations exist to accomplish something, to do some mission. The military, it's clear what they do, but any organization, that's what they exist for. And people are going to be at their most effective when they feel the right way about belonging to that group and being a part of accomplishing that mission. They're connected. There's some connection.
And I agree. I do think there's the science behind what Simon's talking about, with the more intimate. I just think about my church experience in, say, the last 10 years.
Okay.
Attended a church that was about 200. Felt like I knew everybody for the most part. Of course, we had visitors and people, new people but I knew, I felt like I was connected with most of them, or at least had a sense that we were worshiping kind of together and doing life together. And then that changed to, we made a move and went to a bigger church. And the disconnection that I felt in the way to make connection in the larger church was a lot more work. It took a lot more effort to
harder.
Stay connected in the bigger church. So I do think
and it's no
that
reflection
it's just all
on the
scale.
people
No,
of the church.
Church full of beautiful, wonderful people.
Uh-huh.
And if you got to know all of them individually, but it was hard to do that. You didn't have the opportunity to do that.
Scale presents challenges. It really
challenges.
does.
And I think that's the reason it's important that the culture of the company or the organization, that it's there, that you're going to take care of the people. This is good stuff. I love it. Okay, well, let's don't stay here too long. You argue in your blog post that busyness isn't the villain.
Mm-hmm.
It's the environment. So why is busyness the perfect breeding ground for abstraction?
So, first of all, busyness comes with the territory with leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Leaders solve problems. That's what they do. And I don't know if y'all know this, but there's never going to be a shortage of problems that need to be solved. I don't care what business you're in, what kind of organization. You can be government, for-profit, nonprofit, church, whatever. There's always going to be plenty of problems. So busyness is something that no leader is ever going to not have to deal with. That was a lot of negatives.
It was.
People followed that. It is what it is. There's always more problems to solve. But I think, so I'll say it like this. The insidious nature of the constant push for more, I think, is the real problem here. And I think what that means is, however well you're doing, we need a little more.
Yeah.
And the demands are from everybody. From, if you're a for-profit company, your shareholders, they want more.
They want more money.
You made, how much are you going to grow this quarter?
Right.
How much then are you going to grow more than that the next quarter? And we always want more. We want our efficiencies to go up and our costs to go down. And there's always a push for more. And I hesitated whether I wanted to say it this way, but I'm going to do it. I think there's two things that underlie that one is just pure, simple greed. Nothing is ever enough anymore. And then the other thing is a short-sightedness. We're so focused on now that it's hard to look. It's hard as a leader to obtain the grace that you need from all your stakeholders to be able to concentrate 5 years or 10 years down the road, because it has to be now. I have to have my results now. There's an impatience there that is inherent, I think, in our society at large, that hasn't always been there, that compounds this problem and really makes it difficult for leaders. And I'm not letting leaders off the hook.
Sure.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're the one responsible for doing what's right and putting people first. But I do get the immense amount of pressure that leaders can experience because of that we're talking about. That's
very true. So, and moving on from this in just a second, but, when I think it's true that the more that we have to focus on more, that just naturally pushes the people like into the forest,
Yeah. And it makes leaders view people as numbers because the numbers are so important.
And that's the next little part that I think that's important to understand, the forest versus the trees tension that you would kind of have. And you describe this tension that leaders face, being responsible for the whole while still remembering the individual. And how hard is that balance in real life? I mean,
I think it's really hard. I think it's a major challenge that leaders have. And I think there's some things that they can do to kind of stay connected. And I think we're going to talk about some of those and maybe go into a little more detail. But I think it's, again, the world we live in. It's as a leader, you're so compelled to look at the bottom line, and results are always going to be important, but they're not more important. See, years ago, and Sinek talks about this in the book, there was a kind of I don't want to call it family because that's a little too cliche. And I don't know that it's really good business to run your business, your organization,
right,
quite like a family in all cases. But there was a sense of loyalty that organizations felt toward their employees, and employees felt toward their organizations. That's pretty much gone.
Yeah, it is.
These days. That hardly exists at all. And there came a point in time where that shift sort of happened. And Sinek points out in the book that it was when in 1981, I remember when this happened. I didn't grasp the importance of it or the real impact or anything, but the air traffic controllers, federal air traffic controllers, went on strike. We knew a family that went to church with us and lived in our neighborhood who the dad was an air traffic controller.
Okay.
He got fired along with 13,000 other air traffic controllers all across the country. And really that was the first time that something like that had happened at such magnitude of numbers. President Reagan and you know, probably a lot of people who would be interested in watching us talk would be fans of President Reagan, and I don't have anything bad to say about him. But the fact is that he kind of opened the door, and that was a milestone on the path sort of to where we are now, because it kind of, before that,
you would never have had that kind of mass.
In one fell swoop. Yeah. Massively.
It's like, decreased. Okay, you're demanding something extra. Well, let me show you something extra.
Yes. And that kind of set precedent almost, that for high level leaders like, a head of state or a CEO of a large corporation or something like that, in order to accomplish what you need to accomplish, to make a statement, to make your quarterly earnings, whatever. I'm not trying to put words in Reagan's mouth here, but you can do big, large-scale changes that affect people and cost them their jobs or whatever in order to accomplish what it is that you need to accomplish. And it kind of changed the landscape.
And I know I've heard Dave Ramsey speak on this too, about the toxic environments where these companies, that's the first thing that they'll do. Instead of fixing problems within their organization, they'll just say, so sales were bad this quarter. Well, let's fire 5,000 people and get our numbers back to where they need to be. Yeah. And I think that's the whole, concept kind of what we're trying to talk about, is that, you never want to manipulate people into, I'm your friend, so do things for me, or I'm going to, but when you treat people well, you're going to get things out of them that you never would if, it's just a matter of be good to people, love people. And you even wrote about this, or have you written about it yet, where if love is okay in the workplace?
I'm working on that one.
Okay. So there's a lot of things that we've got to, kind of stop and think about with the people. How do we really love the people? And, we've worked with another client where we're begging them to love your people. You're going to get so much more out of them. All of these problems that you're facing, most of them can be solved if you would just take care of your people a little better.
Right. And I think that's what leaders miss so often, is the solution to your problem is not going to be found in the place where you think it is.
Exactly.
And it's almost, you've got to go at it a little bit sideways.
Mm-hmm.
It's not sideways because putting your people first and prioritizing them and what's important and good for them is going to pay off in the long run. And that's
Yes.
always the right thing to do.
Always.
But it's going to seem counterintuitive sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when you have got to make your quarterly earnings
Uh-huh.
or whatever it is. I mean, I'm a big college football fan, and the landscape of college football has never been so focused on immediate results.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're a coach
Mm-hmm.
and you don't win now, you're going to lose your job.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
I've got to come in and build this program,
Mm-hmm.
and we're getting better and better. You don't have time to get
Mm-hmm.
better. You've got to do it now.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing we were talking about earlier. It's very hard. We need leaders with backbone more now than we ever have before.
So we kind of have this, dichotomy a little bit going on that, we need people to make things happen. People make the world move. But we live in such consumerism.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's consuming, everybody wants to be at the top. Everybody, with the age of social media, anybody can be a star, anybody can be an influencer.
We all want it now.
Everybody's fighting for, a spot, a place or whatever.
I need mine.
I need mine. And yet we're growing further apart and we're longing for something that is not there anymore. And we need leaders to show us the way. And
that's so good.
It really is. We need leaders just to kind of hey, no, we're going to do it. We're going to play the long game.
Yes.
And that was one of the things that we were so impressed by with one of our clients that we recently worked with, is that their value system was so on point. And they may not be making all the money they want to make right now because they're not pushing their product.
But they're doing
in
things
a sketchy
the right
way. Exactly. They're not pushing their product in a sketchy way like a lot of people are. But what I feel like is you're going to see the people that are doing it in a sketchy way, it's going to blow up and it's going to burst.
It's all going to come
And by doing it the right way and building the trust in the relationship, it's going to build and just grow and be what I call a Chick-fil-A model, just good, consistent product all the time. So that's exciting. All right. So let's just talk a little bit about practical ways we can stay connected.
All right.
You offer some very practical ways leaders can fight abstraction. Let's walk through those a little bit. So we've got the first one is prioritize your people. What is...
Yeah, I think that's... look at your calendar, and if you're a leader, you're going to have a busy calendar. And as I was writing this, there was a little bit of conflict in even my own mind because, okay, I'm going to have, if I'm a typical leader, like where I came from in government, working with executives and things, their calendars are always jam-packed. And they were jam-packed with people. So I'm like, okay, but they are prioritizing people because that's who's on their calendar. But you got to dig a little bit deeper and see, why is it that these people are on my calendar? Is it just so that I can get what I need out of them and to make a decision and to move on? Or are there pockets of time where I have an opportunity to really talk to them as people and connect and nurture relationships and things like that? And I was fortunate to work with some really high quality leaders who made it a point to do those sorts of things. So this is,
and you would have even just personal time on their calendar. It'd be one-on-one time.
Yeah.
So even let's take it even to like a small or a mid-size office. How do you prioritize your people in kind of that kind of setting?
I think in some ways it can be even harder. Small businesses, entrepreneurs, there's a lot that rides on you to be the producer, not only the leader, but the actual producer of whatever it is that your business is about. And so you have to, along with that hair on fire kind of, I got to get out there and make payroll, and then bring in some revenue so I can make payroll. There's also an element of building and nurturing your team that you have to make sure is in there.
For sure.
And I'm not here to tell you I've got all the answers and know exactly how to do it, but prioritizing that has to be on your list.
Absolutely. All right. And then you got this one. Walk slowly through the crowd. Talk about that.
I've heard John Maxwell talk about that one. And I think I get the idea. What it evokes for me is I'm not a huge politics person, but I've seen the president make an address to the joint session of Congress and things like that, State of the Union, what have you. And they'll a lot of times walk in the back door, come down the aisle, stopping and shaking hands and touching people, hey, all that kind of thing. Or a politician, working a crowd. It's that kind of idea.
Yes.
And I think, politicians get a bad rap in a lot of cases, and sometimes deservedly so, but I think a lot of them have a good handle on that, making personal connections with people.
Yeah.
And I don't think you'll ever go wrong as a leader prioritizing that kind of human touch and interaction, face to face, taking a minute with people.
And I will tell you something that's just really simple. But I've worked in an office where our district manager, in the federal government, you're always, making inputs, loading claims, doing this, that, and the other. And all the different things that you do automatically spits out notices that need to go out to the public, go out to the claimant or whoever you were just working for. And so our printers stay full of print traffic. And our district manager was just very kind to occasionally come through and pick up our print traffic on each side of the building. But as he would do that and help us get our mail processed, and take things to the mail room for us during his spare time, and he would come around, do you have any mail? Well, he always, what you cooking for the Super Bowl? Hey, how's blah, blah, blah? Is your son home yet? Those little things.
Yeah, my guess is
so innocent and like nonchalant, but that he knows that my son is in the Air Force or that he was deployed, or
it keeps him connected.
Absolutely.
It keeps him grounded,
and it keeps us being like, okay, we're a person here.
Yeah,
we matter here because they're they can actually ask us a little bit about our family. So that's another way that walking slowly through the room makes me think about, okay, let's move on. Get to know them personally. I think that speaks to the same thing.
That's just what we were talking about. It's, there's different ways to do that. And it's paying attention, I think, when they mention things, maybe jotting some cheat notes occasionally,
if you have to,
remembering their spouse's name or
Absolutely.
their kids or their dog's name, or, just little tidbits about people, because when it comes back up and you're able to bring something like that back and how's so-and-so doing? That means something to people.
Absolutely. And the people who build the best relationships are the ones that do that. And I could go on and on. I used to work for an attorney who, in his old-timey Rolodex, now I ended up, putting it all in the computer for him. But in all his contacts, he would have the spouse's name, the children's
name. He kept
names,
the best notes.
Where they went to college, what their stuff was. It was fantastic. I loved it. Bring your whole self to work. What does that really look like?
I think it just goes to the point that people aren't work robots. We're, it can't just be all business all the time. That's not how people function. It's not how leaders function. It's not how employees function. And so why should we pretend?
Yeah. And I even thought about, when you bring your whole self to work, you're being a real person. You're kind of being a little bit vulnerable sometimes.
People don't want to do that. A lot of leaders don't want to do that.
They want to keep the little wall between me and my personal things and work. I can take care of them, but they can't take care of me. When really that loyalty is built, if you know, your mom's in the hospital, then people want to support you, during that. So, yeah. And then what about socializing?
So I think this is just looking for opportunities to lay work aside for a minute and get to know each other on a more intimate basis. Again, a lot of people are reluctant to do that, but I don't know why. I really don't get it, because I think trust and respect and likability is so important on a team. And as a leader, the more you can get to know about what it is that makes your employee unique, the more you're going to find something that you can respect about them. Even if it's a low performer, that's going to change the way you view them if you can get to know them as a person.
Yeah, for sure. And it would be really easy if you could pick up like different things about them in different settings. You could learn some things about, people, and even say, really, you've been working over there, but you have a natural gift for this.
Yeah, and uncovering new talents that you didn't know about, new abilities and skills.
But the real thing is to invest in them, and that you care enough about them that you want to learn about them and put them in the best possible place. Yeah, it really all comes back to that every time, right?
100%.
And then this was the one that I kind of threw me out there a little bit. Reconnect with customers. What are you talking about there?
As I was writing this piece, this one kind of came to me out of nowhere, and it doesn't really fit the leader kind of boss employee leader follower kind of dynamic. But I do think in the broader context of leaders needing to stay connected to people and not let people become abstractions, this is important.
Same with customers. The customers don't necessarily need to become an abstraction.
100%.
Okay.
And so we were talking earlier about solopreneurs or people who lead small teams and are out there busting it and getting stuff done. This doesn't really apply to them so much because they're interacting with customers anyway. But a CEO type whose job is not to deliver the ultimate product or service to the end user, but their job is to deal with the numbers and lead the teams and, push the chess pieces around the board. Maybe that's an opportunity for them to connect to some real live end users to get another good dose of what humanity looks like.
That's good. I love that. All right. So this matters more than leaders think, this people part, right? Some leaders might hear this and think, hey, I'm friendly with my team. I'm fine. But why is this deeper than friendliness?
I think friendliness is a really good starting point. I do. But at some point, and this is always going to happen as a leader, if you hang around long enough, you're going to get forced into a corner where you have to make a choice between two things that both seem very important. And that is between your people or your numbers. And I think obviously the right decision is to choose the people.
Yes.
But it's hard to do. And I think that's why we felt the need to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because there's so much pressure on leaders to make the numbers.
Yes.
But at some point, the people are more important than the numbers.
And the numbers are not going to show up if the people aren't there.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's one question leaders should ask themselves after listening to this?
I think the best thing that I could come up with is, when's the last time I went looking for my people instead of my problems?
Oh.
Or put another way, when's the last time I went looking for my people instead of them having to come looking for me?
Okay. That's really good. That's something to think about.
As a leader, I mean, we've talked about already, we lead people. And I've heard it said, if you're supposed to be the leader and you turn around and nobody's there, you're just out taking a walk. So staying connected to your people
Yes.
and knowing where your people are and going looking for them and making sure they're back there.
Right.
That's so important.
I
We
love
can't
that.
lose sight of that as leaders.
Michael, this was a great conversation. Thank you for your insight and for writing that blog for us. You can certainly find that on m2-lead.com under the blogs if you'd like to read that. So thanks for spending a few minutes with us in the M Squared Leadership Conversation space. You know, leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to ask better questions.
Absolutely.
So until next time, let's stay curious, lead well, and keep the conversation going. Thank you, guys.
All right, bye-bye.